It's the beginning of 2 murder trials in north central Florida. The first in Alachua County deals with the death of a retired Korean War veteran. That's first tonight at 6.
The second trial in Marion County, the death of a family member of the defendant. See if prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. Those stories and more. Your News at 6 starts now.
From your local source, WCJB TV 20. This is TV 20 News at 6.
We begin tonight with a developing story. Good evening. Before the Korean War veteran Paul Quant died 2 years ago after being brutally beaten in his own home, he managed to tell his neighbor that it was a man and a woman who had broken into his home and attacked him.
The woman turned out to be Miranda Martin, and last year a jury found her guilty of first-degree murder, and a judge sentenced her to life in prison. Today, her cousin, Austin Jones, is accused of doing most of the beating. TV 20's Kyla Ryan live tonight outside the Alachua County Courthouse and says he's potentially facing a much harsher punishment.
That's right, Paige. Inside this courthouse today, we learned how Austin Jones is potentially facing the death penalty, like you said, if he's convicted of brutally murdering Paul Quant Sr. in 2012. Here's video of Austin Jones facing potential jurors. A jury was chosen today. There were 3 women and 11 men included in that jury, and there are 2 alternates. Now, the opening statements wrapped up a little before 5 o'clock this afternoon, and the defense was very short in their opening statement, but the prosecution showed tons of very graphic images to the courtroom.
She has difficulty understanding what she's seeing. She knows that her neighbor lives next door and he's on a mobility scooter, but she can't identify or see who this person is because he's covered in blood, and she can't recognize him.
Now, what you heard is from the prosecutor, who was saying how after Paul Quant Sr. was beaten, he used his power chair to go to his neighbor's house, and she called 911, but Paul Quant did die in the hospital. Now, Austin Jones had family members there in court today, and the family of Paul Quant Sr. was there as well. Now, I covered the trial last year for Miranda Martin, and a lot of us agreed that the images shown in court today were much more graphic than the ones that were shown during her trial. Now, make sure you stay tuned here at 11, where we'll have the latest from the courtroom, and follow us all week as we follow the trial of Austin Jones. Reporting live in downtown Gainesville, Kyla Ryan, TV 20 News.
Let's take a first look at the weather now for this week, and this would be a nice evening to spend outdoors.
Bill, what can we expect?
You know, clear skies, temperatures beginning to cool off just slowly as we head through the evening hours, but this time of year, it is when you're doing some spring cleaning. And look at the Snyder household. This is out at the curb, but there you go. Quite a bit. Doing a good job. It's a good thing you have those kids to help you with all this stuff. We will expect to see beautiful weather for tomorrow, but maybe some rain to log down these bags of leaves over the next couple of days. Looking at the radar satellite composite, we did have some clouds earlier this morning, but bright blue, clear skies for this afternoon. Looking at your current temperature outside, 67 degrees, winds out of the west-southwest at 6. Humidity is at 40%. And as we expect to see things continue out here, cool but not as chilly overnight tonight. Another beautiful day for your Tuesday, but expect some storms late Wednesday into early Thursday. We'll break that down for you and have the forecast in just a few minutes.
Well, the wheels of justice may turn slowly, but they are turning in a 6-year-old murder case that's finally coming to trial. A north central Florida man accused of killing a 5-month-old relative back in 2008 is now on trial this week. TV 20's Yari Mefrinas tells us whether prosecutors are seeking the death penalty.
It's been nearly 6 years since 28-year-old Rishi Ramguli was charged with first-degree murder in the death of his 5-month-old cousin. Ramguli is not facing the death penalty, but if convicted, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars. It's a case that dates back to January 2008, when deputies charged this man, Rishi Ramguli, with first-degree murder in the death of his 5-month-old cousin.
Did unlawfully and feloniously while engaged in the perpetration of a certain felony, to wit, aggravated child abuse, kill and murder Sanjana Erthra, a human being by causing severe trauma to her head in violation of Florida statute.
When we first reported this story in 2008, investigators said Ramgooly told them the baby girl fell off a bed and hit her head while he was babysitting her. He later changed his story, telling investigators that he accidentally dropped her after he tripped. Ramgooly had his first appearance back on January 24th, 2008. Now, 6 years later, Ramgooly is on trial, represented by attorney Donna Kukler.
I'm one of the attorneys for Mr. Ramgooly. I'd like you to meet Mr. Ramgooly. This is Rishi.
Rock Hooker is the prosecutor. This case will have 12 jurors and 2 alternates. During the first day of jury selection, potential jurors were questioned about their knowledge of the case. Some people admitted to hearing about the case through media outlets. Another concern that came up was race.
You were asked, do you think your feelings about or experiences with people from different races might affect your ability to be fair and impartial juror in this case? And you put yes. We were wondering if you could further explain what you meant by that.
A few potential jurors expressed that Ramgooly's race would affect their decision, meaning they would lean toward a guilty verdict because of his color. Those 3 people were released and will not be sitting on this jury.
And that murder trial is expected to last for about 3 weeks. The Levy County Sheriff's Office is reminding residents about an electric company scam. Scammers are calling Central Florida Electric Cooperative customers and then telling them they have 2 hours to pay their bill or their power will be shut off. The caller then asks for credit card information. If you get a call like this, you're asked to write down the telephone number and then call the police. Central Florida Electric says they do not contact customers by telephone asking for a payment.
The decision to reject an early voting site on the University of Florida campus is drawing the attention of and criticism from Florida's senior U.S. Senator. Bill Nelson was in Gainesville today, where he met with legal experts and students at UF. Some had wanted to make the Rights Union an early voting location, but state law prohibits college buildings from being used for early voting, but not for the actual election day. TV 20's Anna Carabeo reports Nelson thinks the law makes it harder for college students to vote.
It is so patently obvious that there's an attempt to suppress students' votes.
U.S. Senator Bill Nelson accused Governor Rick Scott's administration of trying to suppress college voters by not allowing the Rights Union to be used as an early voting site. His initiative to discuss ways to fight what the senator says is the latest attempt by Governor Rick Scott's administration to suppress voting of certain groups.
By saying that early voting cannot be here on campus and they'll have to go miles and very inconvenient, we ought to be doing the opposite. We ought to be making it convenient for people to vote instead of making it more difficult and therefore suppressing their vote.
The Rights Union location is already a certified voting site on Election Day. The university has nothing against it being used as an early voting site, even though it is undergoing extensive renovations.
The university doesn't oppose the idea of early voting on campus, but state law prevents us from doing so.
A state law governing early voting sites specifically excludes educational buildings. The governor's office says they are following that state law. The student union is not defined as a convention center or a government-owned community center, so it is not eligible to be an early voting site.
The purpose of early voting, particularly for a very mobile population like a university campus, is to be able to update the information, the changed addresses, perhaps change names, so that the vote is cast not on a provisional ballot that might not count, but on a regular ballot.
Last year, state lawmakers rejected an amendment that would have added educational facilities to the list of approved early voting sites. Anna Carabeo, TV 20 News.
UF offered the George Smathers Library as a location in the past, but the city attorney's office said it did not meet the state's criteria.
Advocates of same-sex marriage in North Central Florida are celebrating what they call a step in the right direction along the path to equality. TV 20's Chris Gilmore reports last weekend, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder announced that the federal government will recognize same-sex marriages in all 50 states.
Including the 34 states that don't allow it, Paige. Among that group is Florida, where a lawsuit was filed last month to legalize same-sex marriage. LGBTQ advocates here say there is still a long way to go before hetero and homosexual marriages are seen in the same light. Holder's announcement means that in all federal legal matters, same-sex marriages and traditional marriages will be treated equally.
Survivorship benefits, Social Security benefits is a federal program. Federal income taxes obviously are governed by federal law.
It impacts me personally. It impacts a number of people in our community that have gotten married or that want to get married.
Individual rights are a federal issue. They are a constitutional issue. And I think it's fantastic that this has happened and that the federal government is taking control over, our individual rights and not letting states dictate who we're allowed to love.
The new benefits are limited to issues where the U.S. government has jurisdiction. In all other cases, the law of the land created by individual states remains in effect. Coming up at 11, we'll hear from more people directly affected by the announcement. Chris Gilmore, TV 20 News.
Coming up in less than 3 minutes.
A preview of tonight's featured story on what common drug may be harmful to your four-legged family members. Stay with us.